Hi folks, welcome to my studio, and we're going to paint a watercolour springtime scene. I imagine we're all getting a little bit kind of fed up at the minute being stuck in the house, so let's have a go at doing something that totally takes us away, total escapism for the next 40 minutes or so. And I'm going to paint a watercolour. Now this is going to be a demonstration, so I'll sort of whiz through the picture. Please do ask any questions in the comments. This is live, so if you've got anything you'd like to ask, please do just go for it. So just to mention a little bit about materials here before I do start painting, I've got a sheet of watercolour paper which I've stuck to a board. Now this is a 1/4 imperial size sheet of paper, so we don't have to be too concerned about the size of the paper. You could do small if you like, this is fine, but this is a 1/4 imperial size. I've stuck it with masking tape. This is a bit of wood, so it's stuck to a board. Now as far as easels, it's not needed. You don't need easels. All you need basically is just your lap at a table to put your paints on, or a table to sit at and paint. This makes sense for doing the demo, obviously. I've got a pencil. I'm going to do a very basic sketch in a minute. Very basic sketch. I've got 3 colours I'm going to use for this picture. Okay, that's all. So I want to use some kind of bright yellow. This one is natural yellow light. Now, these are my, look at that close up. These are my own colours here, folks, and these are available from watercolour.tv. But this is natural yellow light, natural red, there it is, and natural blue, which is here. So these colours are going to do the job for us. If you've not got those colours, you could use ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, these are common. You could use alizarin crimson if you wanted to, or rose madder, that's a red, or you could even use, for the yellow, you could use cadmium yellow, or a colour called aureolin or gambonge, that's another yellow you could use. So 3 colours. I've squirted them into a palette. You could use a plate for this if you're new to watercolours. I've got the water here as well. I've got kitchen paper hanging around, and I am going to be using 3 colours basically. So I've got 3 colours, 3 brushes even. I've got these 3 brushes here, folks, for the minute, and that'll pretty much do the job. Let's get these nice and close so you can see what we're doing here. We've got a large brush. This one's a 20. A 14 or a 16 would do the job. We've got a size 10 brush here as well, a round brush, and something a bit finer, a 6. Now you might want something a little bit smaller as well for this. It's entirely up to you how you go on with brushes. It's your call. But let's get nice and close in so we can have a little look at what we're painting here, folks. So we'll zoom in nice and close here, and we'll move the camera into position. Like I say, please do ask any questions in the comments. I will try and answer them as I go along. If anyone's trying to work out what this flashing green thing is at the side, it's a Star Wars pinball machine, so just in case anyone's wondering what that is, that should do the job for us. Let's get a bit closer in. So I've got a standard pencil. This is a HB pencil. There's nothing fancy about this, and someone's just asked me about the paper. This is a knot surface paper. Basically watercolour paper comes into 3 kind of grains. You get smooth, you get rough, and then you get middle, which is knot. This is knot surface paper, alright? So I'm sketching a bit of a building actually. I'm just going to put a couple of lines very loosely sketched in. I want to keep these kind of vertical and pop a line across here for the roof of this thing, keeping this thing nice and simple. I'll pop in a bit of a roof here, and then we'll come down the opposite side. Make sure that the highest peak of this is in the centre for the apex, and then we'll bring that down here as well, like so. So we've basically got this very basic building there in the centre. Now at the side of this I'm going to pop in another one. I'm going to pop another line here, slightly downward on the angle for the perspective, and we'll match the angle pretty much here, and we'll come down. So imagine that's a bit of a cottage or something. We'll not be too concerned about things like chimneys at this stage. There we go. So we've sketched that in, and that's pretty much all I'm interested in at this particular point in the picture. Now in the foreground, I want to sketch in some flowers, some daffodils. Let's say we're going for the springtime thing here, so obviously bear that in mind. So in this bottom corner here, I'm just going to pop in some very naive circles and some squiggles around them, and some flicks of grass. So if you look close at this, you can kind of see where we're going with this. It's basically, it's very rough, but this pencil is going to help the picture, because watercolour being transparent and all, so it's basically little scribbles, basically little scribbles here. Now on the building itself, I'm going to pop in some impressions of some windows here as well, so we'll get some windows coming in. These are rectangular shapes, of course, so we'll get those in there as well, and a doorway. Let's get another window just here as well. So a rectangular shape on the window, and you can see I'm being very loose with this. That's all I want to be. Alright, so if we have a close look at that, we can see what we've sketched in here. This very basic. As long as these lines are fairly vertical, you'll be fine with this one. Doesn't need to be too precise. I'll probably stick a chimney on. I think it needs something, don't it? So we'll just pop a little chimney on here, like so at the top. But if we get that sketch in, and a few little bits in the foreground for a little group of daffodils or something in the corner. I mean, obviously daffodils are out and about at the minute, so something to bear in mind. Okay, now that is enough for me to get started with the painting. Now what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to use some masking tape here, and we're going to tape off some of the building, basically. So I'm going to take the stickiness away. We'll pop the masking tape on here, and this might look a bit rough around the edges, but it'll grow on us, basically. And I'm spending a bit of time protecting these areas with tape. Now you could, if you wanted to, use masking fluid. For those people who know what masking fluid is, liquid latex, that's fine, no problem using masking fluid whatsoever. But I want to keep things nice and simple for this little demo here. And let's get a bit closer in for you so you can see what I'm doing. So basically I'm just sticking the masking tape roughly on the building, and I'm tapping it on my fingers as I go along, because I don't want to be creating any issues with rips, because it's easy to rip the paper if you're not careful here. So one more piece down the side here for the building. There we go. So pop that just there. We can see what's happening there, and that's a great way of adding, keeping that building white as much as we can do. We'll just make sure it's on the inside. All right, that's all I'm interested in doing at this point. Let's come back on this thing so we can see the whole picture here. There we go. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to use the largest of the three brushes. Again, if you just joined us, just saying hello to this live demo today. We've got three brushes. We've got a big brush. This one's a 20, or it could be a 16, but something you can see compared to my thumb, it's a pretty big brush. Size 10, could be a 12. This one is a bit smaller. This is a 6. Doesn't really matter what size of brush it is. And I've got the water pot here, so I'm going to clean the brush. I'm going to wipe off the excess, because a big brush will put too much water on. I don't want it to be saturated. And again, I'm just using 3 colours for the picture. So I'm going to wet the paper, but not saturating the paper here, okay? It's a 1/4 imperial size. It's a little bit smaller than a sheet of A3 paper, for those who know what I mean about A3. Doesn't really matter how big the picture is for this particular demo. It's just nice just to do something, and makes a change not to watch the news at the minute, because we're all kind of in this brave new world, aren't we? You know, and watercolour, of course, is a great medium for that. So never been a better time to get the paint flowing, folks. Get the artistic juices flowing. So we get the water on here, making sure we've got plenty of water around the building, and I'm bringing it round. So I'm wetting the paper first. Literally, I'm simply using just water. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. Make sure it's all covered. So this is my own brand of paper. This is Matthew Palmer paper. It's cotton. Cotton paper means that the first bit of water just goes straight in. The second bit of water wets it. So it's absorbent. Okay. Now let's take some yellow on its own. Notice there's not a huge amount of water going off. And let's mix that in. Now it's a twist. Can you see the twist? So it's a twist with this bright yellow. It maybe is a little bit brighter on the screen than it actually is here in my studio. It's not a vivid, it's a daffodil kind of yellow working around the back of the building here. So it's a twist. It's like a twist action. Lay your brush flat. And let's bring this down into the foreground here as well. Around the cottage. Very loosely working at this stage. Smothering it in. I'm going to go for something nice and colourful here. And we're going to go a little bit stronger at the side because we're going to put some trees in. Now, we know that trees aren't yellow, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So it's not as bright as this here. You're probably seeing this colour a little bit lighter actually. So that's the yellow. Clean the brush. Notice I've left a gap in the middle. Clean the brush. Again, I'm doing that thing where I'm wiping off the excess. So, Elizabeth just said, thanks for taking the time to do this. You know something, I am spending a lot of time at home myself, and now, because I've got to be careful, because I normally teach big groups of people, so, and obviously that is not a responsible thing to do at the minute. So I'm doing lots of stuff online, so you'll see more of this, so please do check out the live workshop that we're doing on Saturday as well. So have a little think about that. That's details are on watercolour.tv. Now I've got some blue here, and we'll twist the blue in. Now I'm not touching the yellow just yet because I want to keep it blue, but now I'm going to touch the yellow, and notice we're going to start to get a few greens coming in. Okay, so I'm mixing on the paper. Nice way of working, folks. Don't be afraid to do that. And we'll get a little bit of this blue coming down here, but not a huge amount at this stage. Getting plenty around the back of the house here, look. So we've got the blue in the centre, but I can encourage the blue and the yellow to mix. I'm kind of scrubbing the paper. It's all a bit messy at this point, but watercolour grows on you, same as any painting medium does. Now let's actually mix a green now. So we'll take the yellow. Always put the yellow in first when you mix greens. I'm working from tube colour, which means that the colours are nice and vibrant. So it's the blue and the yellow, okay? So it's very much a green, and let's work in. It's the same twisty action that I did for the sky and the yellow at the back. And we're gradually going to make this green darker and darker. It's a lot more vibrant on the screen. I'm seeing that as I'm looking over to the screen there. So another question, am I working from reference? Well, actually, no, I'm not. No, I'm kind of, you know, I've been painting for about 30 years. Seriously, so I started painting when I was about 9 years old, so you can guess my age now. And I've been teaching since the late 1990s. So I've been quite fortunate that I've got a bit of a good memory, you know, and I can remember the way things are. And I do lots of live demos on the TV, and I just tend to work from the head. I enjoy that, you know, so something to try. So zero reference for this one. I'm just winging it, let's say, but it's all part of the fun. It's all part of the fun. So let's just bring this down here, and I'm going to clean my brush out, and I'm going to smooth this in so it disappears towards the house. And I've not put a huge amount in this corner just yet, but I shall be very shortly, okay? The green paint, which is the yellow and the blue working together, I'm going to make a little bit darker now. So I'm putting more blue, and if you're careful, a tiny bit of the red, but not too much. So it starts to make a slightly darker green, okay? So nice and dark in the corner, even over the flowers, and we'll get to those very shortly. Twisting around the back here. Still working with the same brush. This is this nice big brush here, so I'm creating this kind of woodland effect. It's a massive foliage. I always tell people at the workshops and things that the first bit of a picture is very much the depression stage, you know. This is the bit when people are like, what's this all about? And then it as you get towards the end of the picture, that's when this makes sense. So if people like to flick around on YouTube, I encourage you to stay for the end of this one, folks, because that's when these pictures make all the sense. Okay, you don't want anything until you finish. At the minute it's just like watching paint dry, literally, but we can see how the colours are building up, and I keep looking back at this. It's great having the screen in front of me, because it allows me to see the picture from a distance, which is a great thing about doing these things live on YouTube. So we're starting to fill this in, making sure we don't touch here and so on. Now I want to take a size 6 brush, which is the smallest one of the 3 I showed you at the beginning, and get a rich yellow and put some rich yellow in down here. I mean, literally I can take it straight from the blob, and I'm popping this in now. If I just kind of grab this a bit closer in so you can sort of see what's happening here, I'm literally just sort of spotting in some very rich yellows. The paper's still wet, and that's because I put a lot of time into the actual wetting of it. Remember, on a cotton paper like this Matthew Palmer paper, the first bit that goes on actually just pretty much seems to disappear, and that's because it goes into the paper. Alright, so just bear that in mind. Just getting some more colour. Just getting some more colour. So nice and thick. I mean, you can see that yellow, this is natural yellow light, but you could use a cadmium yellow for this if you wanted to, or something like an aureolin, which is another popular yellow. We'll make more of a feature of the flowers a little bit later on. Okay, so I'm basically just going in at this stage. It's all nice and wet, and making sure that there's a little group of daffodils in this corner here. The pencil, you can probably just make out the pencil is still there for us. Okay, that's quite important as well. Marvellous. So I want to leave that to settle in. I'm going to come back to this now. So I'm back to my big brush. I'm still working on this thing while it's wet, which is great. I need to go darker. Okay, so it's the blue and the yellow. So I'll put the blue in first this time, so I want a darker green. Not being afraid of this, and just that tiny bit of red just slightly darkens the colour, but without it going too brown. Okay, so it's a mix of all 3 colours, but that little bit of red makes the colour just a touch stronger. Got the tissue here, it's kitchen paper, so making sure, imagine this is the undergrowth. Okay, so it's nice bit of darkness in the foreground, still twisting away. Paper's still damp here, folks. If I do that, you can see it's swollen. That's because it's a bit damp, the paper. I've not stretched the paper, for those people that know what stretching paper is. So again, just twisting away. Let's put a little bit down here. I'm also just going to pop a few little flicks. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to grab a smaller brush here actually for this. Grab a smaller brush, I'm going to put a few little flicks around here. Same colour I've just used, but you can see I'm just kind of flicking it. You can't beat a good flick. A little bit of a flick. And that helps to give that impression of something here while still maintaining what's at the back. And then I'll pick up the other brush, which is the 20. Now, very much so, folks, treat this as a demonstration. This is not a watercolour workshop. If this was a workshop, I'd be taking my time and doing it step by step, but I'm basically working through this just to give you an idea and just to give you something else apart from well, you know what's in the news at the minute. Escapism is what we're talking about. So a few little flicks and bits around here always works very nice. Now I'm just going to use a bit of water. Paper's starting to dry at this point, which is fine, because I've been working for a good 10 minutes and it's still wet. I mean, for people that do watercolour painting themselves, you'll know that it dries quickly, but because we're into good quality products here, folks, we know that this is staying nice and wet. Now at the back of my easel I've got a plastic card, just a normal plastic card. If I get a bit closer in for you as well at this point, get the camera there. I'm just going to use this plastic card and I want to scrape off some trees. Now, can you see that scrape there? think of a plastic card as like a palette knife, but in some respects better because it's got more flexibility than a palette knife, and it's not going to scar your paper as much. Now I could put as much of these as I want in. Put little flicks in between as well. So you can create a little woodland. Do some over here as well. Now, of course, this only works while the paper is wet. So just bear that in mind, won't you? So if you were trying to do this on dry paint, then it wouldn't do anything at all. So there's no point in doing it then, obviously. Now, I shall paint in a few finer trees a little bit later in the picture. I could also, if we get the camera down to the bottom where the flowers are, we could also do a few of these down here as well, just little flicks. You can use your fingernail. Doesn't seem to work as well, but you know, it's an option. So a few little bits in the foreground there, and a few little flicks around the backs of these trees. It just, I know, it kind of helps the picture look as though it's got something happening. Just done a few over this side as well. And it's surprising how you can make a picture look more like a picture even at this early stage. Okay, is this making sense? Are we liking this? Is it boring or is it entertaining? Is it escapism? That's what I think painting is, and that's why I'm doing loads of it. So please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon on my YouTube channel, folks, because I'm going to be doing lots and lots of this sort of stuff. Also, for people that are wanting to do more and more watercolour, I've got a website. You can see it at the bottom of the screen, sort of here. Watercolour.tv, video on demand, learn to paint at home. That's been around for well over 10 years. It's the original and the best. The original and the best video on demand watercolour service. It's all me. There's well over 400 hours of tuition. I'm talking while that's drying. Okay? I'm talking while it's drying, so just bear with me. You can subscribe for a year or a month, folks, and we're going to be doing lots of new stuff, including the home watercolour course. Okay, please do check it out. Now, that is still workable. I can still go in and have a scrape as much as I like, and literally it's just a plastic card. It could be anything from a credit card to a bus pass or whatever. That needs a bit of time to settle in, folks. I'm not going to use a hairdryer because it makes too much of a racket. Thanks for the comments as well, and yeah, so it's a lovely technique, folks. You know, I've spent the past 30 years painting in watercolour, teaching for well over 20 years in developing these techniques. What I'm showing you, that's what it's all about, yeah? So it's me learning you all the techniques that I've spent time learning myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off. Oh, someone just emailed me asking why is there a Star Wars logo here and a flashy green thing. Well, it's a pinball machine at the back. Forget that's even there. Let's take off the tape. Now I'm doing this, let's get close in. I'm doing this as though it's a plaster stuck to my hairy arm. I don't want to rip it because it'll rip the paper, okay? Now, you often get a bit of seepage come down the back of the tape. Depends how wet it was when you put the paint on, but that's not done a bad job. That's not done a bad job. We'll pop that in the bin, a bit of tape there. And then of course I'll work on the building and I will get that thing developing as we go through the picture. So if we zoom back a click here, that is probably dry enough for me to work on. I'm going to go for smaller brushes now. We're going to go for the 10 and the 6, and we're going to start to pull detail into this particular picture. Now, in fact, I just want to get closer in again, because my first thing I want to do is work along the back of this kind of cottage here, really. And I'm going to use this is just a piece of paper, basically. This is just normal copy paper. I'm going to use this as an edge. Okay, and I want to mix a fairly strong green, a dark green, almost grey. So we're going to put the blue in first, okay? Tiny bit of red, just a touch, and then yellow. Again, folks, please stick this through to the end because watercolours happen slowly, as I'm sure you know. So that was too much red, so I'm putting more blue and then a bit more yellow. So we're getting quite a dark colour here actually, and the more yellow, the more towards a green it will become. Okay, so it's a mix of all three primary colours, red, yellow and blue, and it's quite dark. You can see it's quite dark. A couple of taps on the tissue. Another question that's come through, it's not gum tape, this is just masking tape, but it's just brown in colour. This is the stuff that we sell on the website. It's good stuff. Gum tape's the stuff that you have to wet, yeah? So I'm just going to pop this on here, and I want to be careful to paint up the side of the building. I don't want to go over the top of the building if I can. And I'm making use of this, and I'm almost going to stipple the brush here actually. So I'm going to gradually ease off the pressure from the brush. You can see it's putting shadows in. And I'm going to work this across. Imagine this is the undergrowth to the trees, okay? So I'm working this up. Now in a minute you'll see me change the colour into a lighter version. But what's important is creating this edge, because I want to see what's behind this, okay? I'm separating the areas. So I'm going to pop this just here, and over this side where the trees are, I'm going to do it more in the form of flicks going upwards. So I'm basically brushing up here. But again, still with this strong dark colour. That's just as important as anything, because that's what's making this thing stand up. So on Saturday I'm doing a live workshop, folks, which will be from English time, 10 AM till 2 PM. So make sure you tune in for that. Let's bring some of that colour down here. And you can book a space on that on the website Watercolour TV. See that nice darkness? Let's do the same over this side as well. Make sure we get nice and dark down the edge of these buildings, because it's all about contrast. Let's put this here and let's do some flicks up from the base, making sure it's really quite dark. So in a second I will change the colour here, alright? So it's going to alter as we go through. Again, stick this thing through to the end, folks. I know our minds are racing with all this stuff, but it's important to see watercolours finished. It really is. Let's pop a little bit more over here, because I feel like it'll be a bit darker over this side. Cool. Now, so that's giving me some separation. I want to use that colour and put a few shadows around here as well, and in the building very shortly. So I'll darken the foreground. Imagine, we've not said where's the light coming from. That's a common question people ask me, so let's just zoom out a touch. People ask me all the time, where's your light coming from? It's a common question, and for me it kind of evolves with the picture. If I'm painting from life, things are different, but like now I'm putting some shadows coming down from these trees, and I'm following what I imagine to be the hillside basically, with the same colour what I just used for doing these trees. I have added a little bit more water. So imagine dappled light shining through the trees in front of the cottage, over this side as well. I'm not concerned one bit about where the sun is. It's what works to the picture, and that's what I say to anybody that paints. Just enjoy the process, okay? So nice dark in the foreground there. Bit of water on the brush with a tap on this piece of tissue, which as you can see has done some hard labour. And we're going to soften this thing in, and also we're going to soften the tops of the greys in so they disappear behind those trees. So I'm putting shadows in. I'm also going to pop a few little bits of this darkness in here as well, around these flowers, just to get some shadow in the foreground. Alright, marvellous. And then using a smaller brush, the 6, zooming in closer to the building, we're going to put some shadows with the same colour. If I look at that colour, it's quite a browny grey, so I want to pop a touch more blue with it to make it more of a grey. Alright, so basically blue, a little bit of red and a touch of yellow will give you a shadow colour. Okay, a cold grey like this is exactly what we're interested in. Okay, you can afford to be fairly strong with your colour if you want as well, so don't worry too much about it being strong. There you go. we do sell a colour, it's very popular, it's been around for a long time, called Natural Grey. You can buy it from the website again, Watercolour TV. It's a ready-made shadow colour. Why is it important to have it ready-made? Because the next time you mix it, you might struggle to get the correct tone. So we've got shadows cast this way, which means your light is on the right now, because the shadows, which means I want to work on the cottage that way. So, but my first shadow is going to be under the eaves. Now you'll see me start to rotate the board at this point. So if you're just tuning at that point, don't worry. And I'm doing it an L shape. I'm doing an L shape. I'm cleaning the brush, giving it a couple of simple taps, and I'm putting water here, and then I'm dragging that grey. Look how gorgeous that shadow colour is. Some people will tell you to use purples and violets for shadows, but I look at shadows around me and I see them as grey, simple, you know, and that's how I've always worked in watercolours. Okay, I look at colours to be what they are. So I'm basically blending it. Now blending can be a tricky technique, so it's something to practice before you give up. Okay, so I can basically use this brush almost dry, and I can smooth that grey into the rest of the paper here, making sure things aren't too rich. So it's got that shadow. Now that is pushing that back, it's pushing it behind, and I'll do the same thing up here as well. So I'm going to bring in the line up here as well, nice and strong for your colour. Stop there, turn it on the side, and then what we'll do here is we'll come down the corner. So it's the same thing, but I'm putting a little bit more colour on this one. Exactly the same process what I've just done, kind of shaded before and after. Always give it a couple of taps on the tissue before you put it on your paper. Now I'm putting water here first, and then I'm dragging the grey into the water, so it allows it to mix on the paper. Now I can go right to the edge and smooth it out, and also turn it into a cast shadow at the same time. You can see I'm bringing it into the landscape a little bit. It just helps the building to sit down as well, which is a good thing. So if we zoom back a click, we can see that we're starting to get a bit of a scene starts to happen. Now do let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more live video tutorials and more stuff on YouTube. Okay, now on this side here I want to paint in a little bit of a shadow down the edge of the building. Sorry, the chimney even. Sticking with the same formula that I said. I'm just going to bring that into the painting here. We'll work on the chimney some more later. If we get a touch closer in as well, what I want to do is I'm actually going to make sure that I've got a bit of a shadow under the eaves. See that shadow? Now notice the gap I've left. Couple of taps and a bit of a fade working down. So I'm basically smoothing the paint out, okay? So we can see there that nice kind of, we're starting to see something happen here, aren't we? We've got a little bit of something going off here. Just want to make sure that things are nice and strong at the side of this building here, that's important. Make sure we've got a good bit of shadow going off, scattered around the picture. So a few little sort of flicks here and there is always going to be important. Wonderful. Now on the roof of this cottage, I want to add a bit of colour to that, to be honest. And I want it to be like an orange, a bit of a sort of rustic kind of terracotta really. So for that it's yellow obviously, and red I could use for that, and it'll give me like a terracotta colour, because that'll really shine out nice against the background. So a bit of an orange coming into play. See the sort of terracotta colour? Beautiful. If people know Whitby and Robin Hood's Bay in Yorkshire, you'll know this kind of style of sort of cottage with a nice red rustic roof. Let's get a bit closer into this cottage then. Okay, so let's paint in this roof then. So what we'll do here is we'll come down and we'll do this in a couple of stages, alright? So the first one goes in next to the, really tidy next to that edge, okay? We'll revisit that in a sec. We'll do this one here, put a little bit on the corner, right up to the chimney. So this is a nice lesson in colour mixing as well, because just from using 3 colours, just have a think for a second how many colours we've actually mixed so far on this watercolour. Lovely job. Now when I clean my brush, give it a couple of taps on the tissue, revisit this one and smooth it in. Revisit this one and smooth it in. Can you see where I've left a lightness? So it's standing out against the background there. Can't go wrong, can you really? Beautiful. I mean, it just brings the whole thing alive when you put that colour in. Let's do a little bit of that colour down this back edge as well. And then it's a case of working on detail, putting the windows in. I'm going to put a bit of blue into that colour. Can you see it makes it darker? So if I kept adding blue to that orange, it would go grey eventually. Go brown into grey, because I want to make sure that I've got a nice dark edge, especially where it meets the other part of the building. And I'll revisit that a little bit later and put some extra work into it as we start to go towards the detail. Now, pumping more blue into that colour, quite strong, quite heavy, tiny bit of red as well. That's quite a lot of red. And a bit of yellow, and we've got the strong, heavy, rich colour, almost not black, but a dark. We don't use black because it's too dark, basically. We can put that across here. Imagine the guttering, I suppose you could say. We'll pop a little bit down here as well. A little bit of detail coming into the roof as well. And basically, I'm using this almost like a pen, making things look a bit sharper. We'll also start to do the windows in a second as well. Let me clean the brush and wipe it almost dry on the tissue. Number 6 brush. Now if you feel that this a size 6 brush or a number 6 brush is too large, then just use something smaller. I mean, this is a fairly new brush. You can see how pointy that is, can't you? That makes a considerable difference really, because that's what makes this thing more striking. I'm going to pop in a few little lines coming up here and here as well from that dark I've just put in, and you can see it's starting to pull detail in. If we zoom back a click, we can see it's starting to make a focal point. Yeah, loving these shadows. In fact, I feel now I've got a darker colour in play that we are going to be a little bit darker still with this colour what we've been using, because I want to get some gorgeous shadows coming in from this side. You know, like it's almost an evening atmosphere, I guess. So low light coming into the picture, dragging the colour down. Now, just remember, folks, and for those who have just joined us, just remember this entire thing was done with no sketch and 3 colours. Okay, so that is, and it's so enjoyable to do this. It really is. And I've got no idea how this picture is going to end up. It's starting to get there, and that's why I enjoy working from no reference. That was a question that came from one of the viewers in the comments about, did I do a sketch or no, sorry, it was, did I have any inspirational photographs? Well, no reference whatsoever here, literally just me painting straight in. And I tend to find that my paintings are a little bit looser when I do that. Like this one is nice and free and nice and loose. It's working nice, isn't it, yeah? Are we happy with this? Is it starting to look like something? Let's get back into that building. Let's start to pull some detail into the building now. Let's just come back a click with the camera. So more of the darkness, more darkness is what I'm interested in. So we've got the grey, we've got the yellow and the red, all three colours. You kind of get used to how much of each colour to put in, but remember you can get this colour ready made. It's called natural grey, but it's quite a rich sort of grey really. And I want to get some detail into the cottage. Not a huge amount, but little bits. So first of all, to the windows, and popping windows on is always a nice thing to see in a picture with buildings on, because it's like putting the eyes on. So we're popping a couple of lines here. Now on this building here, I'm doing them as L shapes. See the L shapes, and I'll show you my reason for that. If I tilt it forward, you can see it's straight. It's because it's the board is at a slight angle. That's why it looks like it's leaning. All right. So we can pop as many windows as we like onto this cottage, and of course we need to think about a bit of a doorway as well, don't we? So I'll bring a doorway in here as well. Maybe a little tiny window. That can be the downstairs toilet window. Do you know how you can tell it's a toilet window? So if you look close, there's a knitted doll sat on a toilet roll. That's the universal sign, at least it is in this country, for a toilet, a downstairs toilet. I think my grandma used to make them knitted dolls. Smash in, clean brush, couple of taps on the tissue. Let's come back to that first window and let's just soften it off to the right side, and the same here on this side as well. So I'm dragging the colour with that size 6 brush into the picture. Beautiful. Over here as well. Now on the doorway, I want the doorway to be open actually, so I'm going to make it, put a bit more colour into the doorway. So a question just come through about how you always manage to make the paintings, if you're not careful, can look muddy. How do you keep this lightness that we've achieved here? Well, it's down to not putting too much paint on in one go. I mean, that's the secret really, and it's learning where to leave light and where to leave dark, and it's something that comes over time really. So it's a case of just kind of keep going. Don't overwork. A common misconception in watercolours is to think, oh well, this bit's a bit dark, I'll put a bright yellow over the top or something to make it lighter. But that is something you shouldn't do, because watercolour's transparent, so if you lay it over the top it just goes darker. Okay, so it's leaving the light out, and a bit later in this painting, folks, what I want to do is show you how to put some light in. This is an important one. Put some light in at the end. Okay. Another question is, what do you do if the paper dries? I was only concerned about the paper being wet for that first background wash, and that is the case for. Let's take a look at some of the paintings we've got around the studio. So I've got this one here. This is a lighthouse here that I've recently done. There will be a full tutorial on this on the website watercolour.tv, so if you're a member of that, you can access this, how to paint it. The only piece I wanted wet was the sky, the clouds, to get that soft edge. That's the only bit I was interested in. All this was done dry, so it's not as a big problem as you think. But if you are working on the sky and it does start to dry on you, I wonder if that'll stay there. Just dampen it down again. But it's all to do with the paper. If it's good paper, it's all to do with the paper, because the paper makes things stay wetter longer. And this is my own paper, Matthew Palmer paper, and it's cotton based. And cotton, 100% cotton paper, seriously makes the world of difference. People say to me, you know, how much should you spend on paints, brushes? Well, what I'd say to you is put the most money into paper, because that is the secret, honestly, I promise you. Shouldn't say this, but you can use inexpensive brushes to paint a picture. You might struggle, but you can do it. But with good paper, you can get clean edges, you can lift the colour off, which we'll see later. And yeah, we've just got a comment there about lift out brushes. Yes, well, we shall bring lift out brushes into play. Probably my favourite brush of all. Now over the top of this window here, I'm going to use the tip of this brush to paint in some windows over the top of what I've already done, okay? So basically I'm going in here and I'm using just almost a single flick of the brush, I guess you could say, and I can pop little windows in. And if I want to make it as though the door is kind of swung open, I could do a little, I'll move my hand in a minute, a little sort of triangular shape at the top, and you'll get the impression as though the door is slightly set back against the door there. Okay, I'm just going to come back to the orange colour, which has all disappeared now because I've mixed over the top of it. Remember the orange that I used for the roof, and I'm just going to pop some little windowsills and things on the cottage here, look, and lintels. Always makes a difference. Even the chimney pots as well. Look. Put some chimney pots on to the cottage. If I pick up a bit of the grey, I can just drop in a touch of darkness. And that helps to give an impression of a bit more detail in those lintels and sills. So watercolour painting never 100% permanently dries, especially if the paint's strong, and you'll see what I mean by that when we get towards the end of this picture. Let's just come back a little bit now. Let's come back to the piece of paper that we had a few minutes ago when we did the bit around the side, and let's mix up a good strong bit of green paint. So it's getting a bit messy, that yellow, and I'll probably get some more in a minute. We'll just put some yellow and blue. I want it to be dark anyway, so I'm not concerned if it's a little bit messy, but a rich dark green with plenty of blue and a touch of red would be fine. So a very dark green basically. These palettes we also sell clean versions of, which you can check those out as well if you're interested in the palettes. Now if I was to pop, okay, right, I'll show you this. So if I pop this at the side of that there, on the little side building, and if I do a nice bit of a stipple here, now I can use a bit of that grey if I want to, and I can go in and take that away and then put that here, stippling. It'll make a hedgerow, almost to say there's a bit of a division between that building and that building. Does that make sense? Can we see that? So I'm basically creating could be a hedge or a bush or something, but can you see how we're starting to sort of sweep off at that angle? I'm just going to come back a little bit here, and let's have a look at the whole picture. We've not seen it for a bit. There we go. And I will continue to do that a touch. Let's bring that down here. So I'm stippling this colour very loosely along this edge. Remember, there's only a little bit of sketching in this at the beginning, just a touch for the cottage there. So that could be like a line of some sort of hedgerow, but it starts to create more of a foreground interest. I want to do a bit more of that over here, alright? I want to bring that one down there. So if you squash your brush, it goes all spiky and it allows you to stipple some detail. So it's like a little bit, let's get a bit closer in for you. Like a line of trees or something in the picture there. I'll actually bring that across. I think that'd be nice to see that further over. It'll help to give a base to the cottage. And literally, I am, and I'll say this to you now, folks, I am making this up as I go along. And that's how I tend to demonstrate, because I just bloody enjoy it. It's a simple fact, you know. I just enjoy doing this process. I just like creating something from nothing. In painting, that is, of course. Now I can taper this off, get a bit of darkness in the base. Almost, again, another little hedgerow here that can disappear into the shadows. So I've just run out of colour, I'm going to get a bit more. Making sure things are nice and strong. And I feel I want to put a few little bits around here as well. Now literally at this point, I'm just going to zoom in a bit closer for you again. I'm just kind of spotting things down here. So I'm just using the tip of this number 6 brush to put little flowers and things around here. It all kind of helps it look like a garden. If I come back to the grey and pop some lines coming down this way. Still got the grey hanging around from earlier, look, this is it. You know, for shadows. Bring the shadows down here to help that to sit in the picture again. So a simple shadow grounds it, basically. And of course we'll do the same over here as well, put some shadows at the back of that. Even a bit of dark stuff in front of it would be fine. There we go. So we're starting to create a nice base to this thing here, this house, and it's made a focal point after the picture. So it's looking good, folks. Now very soon I'm going to work in the foreground, and I want to have a look at the back and put some larger trees in place. Okay, so do please stick with us through this live demo. If I did want to put some interesting colours, I could probably use a bit of the red. Natural red is quite a strong colour, so if you want to pop some little sort of flowers or something around. Don't ask me what they are. I'll tell you what, you tell me what flowers they are in the comments, alright? It's in your hands. But it's amazing how a little bit of red just adds a bit of something to it, yeah? Okay, beautiful. Now let's take a look at the foreground of this thing a little bit. So we're just going to move the camera down here a touch. So I'll have a little look around here. I'm going to put a bit more detail into these flowers. But my yellow is no longer yellow, so I'm just going to get some more yellow there. Anticipation is half the fun. So we'll get a nice bright yellow. And we're going to take that colour, quite rich, quite thick, and pop in some stronger yellows. Yellows are hard colours to overpaint unless you're using the paint like I'm using there, very thick. I mean literally I can take it straight from the blob, almost like oil paint. And I'm sure if you look at the brush you can see how thick that paint is there, can't you? That is seriously strong stuff, which is what I'm interested in for down here. So I'm putting some very thick blobs, and that will dry a little bit lighter because watercolour always does, just for giving some foreground. Alright, so as I'm painting this, it's the end of March 2020, and there is lots of daffodils around. There's still a few snowdrops hanging around as well at the minute, so you know there's plenty of inspiration out there. But hopefully while we've been painting this, you've not been too concerned about world events, and you've popped into a bit of escapism for a little while, because painting has got me through some interesting times in my life, but I have been fortunate to make a career out of watercolour painting, and it's been a privilege. It is, and it still is. So stick with me, folks, because we'll be doing more and more stuff online as we go through the year, of course. Let's put some little bits of that yellow at the background here, almost like with some daffodils at the background here. Just basically dots, okay? So that's bringing this area forward, which is quite important for the painting. Okay, clean that brush out. Now I need a good rich green. I've kind of got some here, but I want to make some more, so it's blue, quite a definite blue and yellow, but a very strong blue in there. So that's a very crisp green number 6 brush. You might notice I'm kind of rolling the brush over the edge. So in this corner here, I want to rest on the paper. Now hopefully you can see this without getting my hand in the way. It's a bit of a tricky area, but I want to paint in some of the leaves and some of the grasses around the flowers. You can see how it's bringing it out, and you're putting darkness in between. I can put a few flicks weaving around the back as well. Bring these right to the edge. You can see how the paint's almost like a speckled, because it's not loaded in colour. It's a bit dry, which is quite important to mention on that one. I'm just going to make sure that this hedgerow kind of disappears off somewhere as well. Make sure things are all nice and dark, and we're nice and rich, and we are working forward across the front of the painting. Now I could actually swing over to this side and pop in a few little bits. I mean, you wouldn't really see them, but I think for balance, I think it's quite a nice idea to bring a few bits over here as well. Now there's all sorts of random grass around, of course, and I'll pop a few little dots on the tops of these ones. In fact, I want to turn this on the side because I'm struggling to get my hand to it, and I want to use this. So for the first time I'm painting upside down, which you'll often see me do on some of the videos, you know, rotating the board around to a more comfortable angle is not a bad thing to do. Put a few little spots on the tops of these grasses here. You know, imagine just a bit of sort of wilderness in the shadow, of course. It's in the shadow, which is fine. And if I turn that the right way, you can see where we're going with that, can't you? So it's in the foreground. But I'm just going to pop it there for a minute, and I'm going to do a few more bits on that, making sure the colour's nice and fresh. So it's the blue and the yellow, but more towards the blue. And actually I could just pop a touch of red in there now, I think, to make it even darker. But when you put red in with green, just be a bit careful not to go crazy with it. You don't want to be too strong. And I'm literally just putting in some very... This is the shadow area, you know, so this is fine. We can have this dark and rich and strong. So if you've just joined us, folks, make sure you hit the subscribe button. There's quite a lot of painting tutorials already on my YouTube channel, so please do make sure that you hit the subscribe, and of course hit the bell, because then you'll know when we're doing the live broadcasts, which we'll be doing on a regular basis, as well as uploading some new stuff to YouTube, and of course Watercolour TV, which is massively important to me because I've put my heart into that, folks. www.watercolour.tv. There's a bit of a link, well not a link, but there's a bit of an ad here, but also if you go into the description you'll see a link for that as well, so you can see how you can get the membership. and you can enjoy exclusive. It's like a Patreon, let's say. I love that corner. I think, let's just zoom back a bit. I think that corner, how are we looking, folks? I love that darkness. It's creating a gorgeous bit of separation over there. Love that. I like the shadow area. It tells you that your light's casting down, dappled light kind of thing. Just putting a few more bits around here of a similar style. Might just pop a few little sort of dots around the tops of these grasses too as well, actually, because you know it all kind of helps in the picture, making sure things are nice and dark. We are getting towards the end of this one, folks. I do want to bring some tree into play though, so I want to show you how to paint a tree very shortly. Stick with. I'm just using this colour, this darkness, to pop in a few little bits and bobs of detail around. Now I'm just going to turn this on the side for a second, and I'll get the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. There it is. What I want to do is I want to take a nice clean yellow, which I need more of. So again, this is natural yellow light. It's a beautiful colour. So a question come through saying, where do you buy your brushes? Well, I've got my own range of brushes actually. Because I've been painting for such a long time and we've developed a bit of a Matthew Palmer brand. So head over to watercolour.tv, click on the art shop and you'll see all the brushes that we use. I've got specialist brushes for specialist jobs. These brushes are my gold brushes, and we actually sell a set here which contains 5 premium brushes made from sable hair, including the ones we're using, and you get a brush case as well. So you may be interested, possibly. I'm sorry to plug things, but people asking me about this stuff. So I've got a nice rich yellow, and what I want to do, I want to attempt to splatter. Okay, so basically we're going to do a bit of that. So I'm basically splattering thick yellow. Now this can be quite hard to see. If we get really close, and you might see it better. But basically I'm just sort of spraying the colour, spraying the yellow, the light yellow. Just getting some more paint around this area. Nice and clean with the paint, nice and clean with the yellow. So I'm sort of spraying over the top. Can you see it going on there? It kind of puts little speckles over the place. Now it doesn't matter if that goes elsewhere. I mean, it's all part of the picture. I want to do a little bit higher as well. You can see it over the green here. It just adds a bit of warmth to it. And of course, if you wanted to do any of that splattering, you're not painting that said it was going to fall. Well, it just did. If you want to do any more splattering around this corner, I could do a little bit. Just a touch of that yellow. Just say there's a bit of colour there. It's not essential, but it's there, and I think that's quite effective. And let's zoom back a bit as well. Let's look at the whole picture. Let's do the same thing with the green as well. Let's take some green, do a bit of splattering with green. Now I want to work this up towards the trees a little bit as well. So basically taking my finger and just tapping the green splatters. Again, another great technique. Now it doesn't matter if it goes over the sky. Let's have a look at it there so we can see it a bit closer. It's all part of the effect, and it helps to give a bit of leaf. A bigger brush will give a bigger splatter. I'm sure you know that. But it's nice to control that there. Okay. Now if we zoom back on the picture, we are seeing quite a nice scene there taking shape in front of our eyes. I want to paint a tree coming into this picture now. So for this I want a bit of a sort of grey brown. So I'll take the blue, pop the red until we get a purple, then we'll put yellow, and we can alternate between the yellow and the red so we get a bit of a brown kind of colour. You can see the colour there. like a bit more yellow there, make it more brown. Not a rich brown by any means. I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring in a tree that's coming off almost from the side of the paper here. Okay, let's come back a touch more so we can see what's happening. So it's coming in from the side. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in and paint in the branches in the direction that they grow. That might sound a bit obvious, but you'll be surprised when people go the opposite way. And I'm bringing these branches in, of course, in the springtime. In this time of year, daffodil time, we're still gonna get bare trees. Okay, there's not a huge amount of leaf around at the minute. There's very little. They're just starting to poke through, aren't they? Or they are, certainly here in the UK. Bringing this in, and this is a good advert for a brush here, folks. I mean, just look how fine we can make that. We can really get this thing pristine and crisp, can't we? Alright, because it's a pointy brush. And if you've had your brush for a few years, it's probably starting to show signs of age, and it probably looks more like that as opposed to, you know what I mean, don't you? So I can bring as much or as little branches as I want sweeping in. It just kind of frames that side. That side I'm pretty happy with. I like this sort of openness. But this side I feel we could balance the two dark corners with a bit of this colour. So we're getting there, folks. Hope you've enjoyed watching this, because I've enjoyed painting it with you. So again, I'm just making sure that I'm nice and fine on the ends of these branches. Of course, you can use finer brushes. You could use what we call a rigger brush, which is a long pointy brush if you've not got something that's fine. Let's get a bit close in so you can see this. Let's just bring a few branches coming up here as well, weaving in between all this stuff, and even putting a few coming up in the background as well. Let's just zoom into that side of the painting here. So I'm actually popping in a few extra trees, almost little flicks. It kind of goes alongside what you've already done with the card at the beginning. And of course, while I've got this dark colour, you know, it's tempting to add a little bit of a... Let me zoom in a little bit for you there so you can see what I'm trying to get at. So a bit of like a fence or something, you know, a bit of a border. So a few little fence posts. It gives scale, bit of detail to the picture as well. And I often like to paint in like an old rustic broken down gate. So imagine that's an old gate that's just kind of seen better days. It just gives scale to the picture, little bits of interest, little bits of detail. Pop a line underneath here. Marvellous. And let's have a look at the other side as well. Let's come back a little bit more here. Make sure things are nice and dark around there, which they are. Let's take a look back at the whole picture. Pop some little fence posts over here as well. And pop an old gate over here as well. That one's a bit more complete, that one. There it is. It gives scale. Like an old farm cottage. Almost there with this one, folks. Really am. Just going to put some light into the picture in a minute. I'm going to wash off some paint for you in a second or two. Just putting a few little flicks around these trees, like so. And I'm just going to mix a bit of a light green actually. So I'm going to take some of the yellow and the blue and mix them together here. Not strong. Look at this. Any offers for this? Looks like something you find hanging from a tree. Slightly dry brush, and I can basically, I can kind of make the brush go flat actually. I can pinch it, and I can lay it flat, and I can sort of tap and sort of rough it against the edge of the paper. Now, if I just have a quick close-up of that to show you, and I'll zoom back. Because it's a spring picture, we don't want to be seeing much of this, but a little bit of that really calms down the surrounding area, don't it? Yeah? Do you think? And of course, if you're going to put a leaf on, you can just put a few little sort of spots and dots around. They're just starting to poke through. I mean, it's mainly buds at this point, but there's a few little sort of spots and dots around, but a nice little bit of, a few little sort of dabs and dots around the tree, it just helps. And literally I'm jittering, I love that word, jittering, as I paint them in. So if you're in a different country to the UK and you want to know what sort of grade of brushes I'm using, these are a sable mixture, which are a lovely quality watercolour brush. But I suppose a bit like the paper really, you kind of get what you pay for, to be honest, you know, with watercolour. Same as anything, I guess, really. So a nice quality brush like this. But if you do a quick Google search of Matthew Palmer brushes, you'll see everything. You'll find us on there, folks. We've been around for long enough now. I'm going to do a little bit of that dry brush over this side as well. Just a little touch. It's kind of using the brush flat against the paper. It's a way of adding a bit of texture to the trees. So it's amazing to think how this picture started. It was a basic sketch of that cottage, and it was a bit of masking tape stuck over the top of the building, and look what it's turned into, this gorgeous watercolour. But I do want to finish off the picture by doing one thing, folks, and I want to finish it off by putting a little bit of light into the painting for you. Now obviously you can watch this back on YouTube, it will be on there for you to enjoy. I just feel like I want to do a little bit more of that dry brush work around here. So that's the texture again. So it does help if you press the brush flat a little bit when you do that. And just a bit of a splatter in that corner with the green. Lovely. Okay, so yeah, lift out brushes then. So these are something that I developed a long time ago, and it's a square brush, but it's a special hair that's tapered. If I show you close up, you can probably see. If I hold it there, you can see it's like a special fine hair. It's called the Matthew Palmer lift out brush, and it's a way of removing a bit of colour, taking a bit of light out. This one is the large size. There's a few different ones out there. And if I zoom in a bit closer to some of these areas, I can show you what I can do with it. First of all, the tree here. You do want to get yourself some dry tissue, okay? So if I clean the brush, squeeze it through my fingers so it's got a bit of water. And I'll put some light. In fact, I want to be closer to this because I want to really show you this. Squeeze it through my fingers so it's damp, and it allows me to go in and put some of the tonal work of the tree. Can you see these light bits I'm taking out? I mean, that's what it's removed. So it's a crisp edge. The only problem with these is it's bloody addictive. This painting here of London, I'm sure that we all know this famous view. There we go. This is pretty much all done with lift out brushes. So it all went in with natural grey, and then the lift out brush was used to mould all these gorgeous highlights in and around all of this to really make it stand out and get that gorgeous, you know, that gorgeous highlight effect. It's a beautiful way of working, it really is. Let's get close in again. Drifted off then, didn't I? But I mean, look what it's done to that tree. It's brought it alive, which is wonderful, okay? So that's a great way of adding a bit of light into your tree. Of course, if you've got like a branch overlapping like here, you could just lighten the branch in front and it brings it in front like on that one, if I lighten the trunk that runs over the top of it, all of a sudden it goes behind the tree. So you're creating 3 dimensions. Let's move over to the cottage and down to this area and do some highlights around the cottage. We can make that doorway look a little bit more as though it's opened back into the building by lifting it off. You can see the effect? We could put a line across the edge of the ridge of the roof and bring some lines coming down to make the roof look a little bit more detailed. Comes off so easy with this brush. There you go. Can we see the highlights? Down here as well. If you wanted to make any of the windows lighter, then you've got an option of doing that as well. The fence post, if you want to put a lighter side on any fence posts that are overlapping a dark area, and just tap, tap, tap. Can you see that they've now all of a sudden come forward? Lifting out, folks, it's, you know, you're getting near the end of a picture when you start lifting paint out. Same as here as well. If I lighten this side of these fence posts, give it a scrub, give it a good old press, there you go, brings them out, don't it? And of course, if I want to put any fence posts that were overlapping these bushes, rather than painting them in dark, you can do negative. So you've got posts there. It's all making a focal point, basically. If you didn't manage to scrape off the trees with the plastic card right at the beginning of this demo, then you can go in now and you can do it afterwards. Like so. Okay? Massively addictive technique, folks. Just down into this corner here and where the flowers are briefly before we finish. Just want to pop in and show you that you could also do the same thing here if you want some lighter grasses. I'm not sure I do, but I'm going to show you the effect anyway. Can you see how you can take a bit of light out of the grasses, so you can add a bit of highlight here and there. And of course you could do the same thing if you come over to the yellow, sorry for the juddery camera work, you could pop in a few highlights around here as well. It all helps, it really does. And the most important thing to do on this picture, and I want you to sort of bear with me on this one, is to take away the masking tape, because that clean edge, that satisfying peel of masking tape at the end of a watercolor really just kind of frames things, really, you know, and it just makes the thing look nice and crisp. Now that started life as a white piece of paper with a simple sketch of a couple of flowers and a cottage, and we've used just 3 colours. Remember the colours: natural yellow light, we also used the red, which is natural red, and natural blue. And we've created a gorgeous springtime watercolour picture, folks.